The subject, of course, is very, very controversial at the moment, because right now he's in jail. And of course, on false charges. And he's kept in awful conditions. Being the former prime minister, of course, was done a lot to Pakistan during his tenure of 3 years. He has been targeted by the powers that be. And the powers that be, of course, are the army, which has always had power in Pakistan and have had their own dictators for a period of time, and then brought in very corrupt politicians to sort of rule in the name of democracy. It's absolutely a total and utter disregard to the institutions of democracy. With the result, the country has suffered and the people have suffered. If you take Pakistan today, it is now even further down the poverty type of scale than even Bangladesh and, of course, India. Both of those countries, which were created at the same time, as it were, or made independent, they have, in fact, let me just, they have, in fact,
the parties, what is party?
Yeah, I'll come all to that. Yeah, I'll come to that. There's plenty of information that you're going to get, so you don't have to ask me questions, while there'll be a time for questions later on, because I'll be covering a fair amount of stuff. Now, he created a party, in the 60s. I was there, in fact, doing an assignment in Pakistan. And I remember one of my family members, they were actually registering members for that party. Now, coming back to the corruption that is there in the country, because of the military rule and because of these corrupt people that have been put in by and supported by the outside powers as well, these corrupt politicians have come in with the idea that they will carry out the bidding of the powers that be. One is the army, and the other one is the foreign sort of forces that have controlled Pakistan since its inception. So what that has resulted in is a complete destruction of the institutions that protect democracy. So we have in name democracy, but nothing by way of institutional power that keeps the checks and balances. So what we are seeing today is a Pakistan which is total and utter sort of mess as far as the institutions are concerned. And how were the institutions messed up? Well, they were messed up by these political leaders who were ruling the country by nominating their people to positions in these institutions. So if you wanted a judge, you put in your own man, with the result that the whole judiciary, I'm not saying all of it, but majority of the judiciary has been put in by these corrupt leaders. And very few of them come out with any type of ruling which is independent, if you like. And what they do is to give a legal cover to what needs to be done in order to try and harass your opponents. And this is what's happening in Pakistan at the moment. And the only leader that has emerged in Pakistan since Bhutto for a while was regarded as a people's man, and he set up a party, created a movement. It's still in existence as a party, but taken over by corrupt people, which like Zardari, and I'll talk about these corrupt people soon as we go. And you have, in fact, judges right now, today, making decisions on cases which have been are fraudulently sort of conceived and brought up, and sentences passed which are invalid legally, but because it has been made by corrupt judges, it is accepted as a ruling and carried out by the corrupt officials that are around. I was at a protest last week at one of these protests which have to do with the judge that issued the sentence to Imran Khan for selling his watch, which he had got as a gift, which was a very legal thing that he did. But they twisted it around to make it seem that it was not, kosher in a way. But that sort of ruling meant 3 years in jail for him and 5 years disqualification. Now, why is this all happening? Why? Because he put up an argument when he was in power for 3 years that he wants accountability. And his party is the party of accountabilities, PTI, Party for Carrying Out the Justice Party, if you like, translation, Tehreek-e-Insaf. So when he came in and started to make decisions which were really in the interest of the country for a change, as opposed to the previous rulers, the powers that be didn't like that, both domestic and foreign, USA in particular, and of course UK being complicit with it, keeping quiet and saying this is a domestic matter. So we have a complete sort of case of a real good politician emerging after 70 years in Pakistan who wants to do something for the people and who in fact wants to have an independent foreign policy. Now, when he voiced these and when he told the USA, no, we can't have a base in our country now after the Afghan sort of debacle, then USA said, okay, we'll sort of sort you out. And the way that it happened, I'll just go on to that a bit later, as to how that actually came about, how he was ousted from power by the collusion of the local people and the foreign hand. So let's get started essentially on this. Okay, agenda today. Basically, he's in jail. Today or tomorrow is going to be a decision by the Supreme Court as to whether he should be released on this bogus charges that have been made. So we'll see now tomorrow whether the judge will have the spine to be able to stand up to the powers that be who want to keep him out of politics totally. So the decision is going to be today and tomorrow. So it'll be very interesting to see whether the judges, Supreme Court judges, who know the law, who know what needs to be done, but don't have the spine to be able to do it, which is such an astonishing thing. And what is the fear that they have? The fear is that these powers be, especially the secret agencies of the army and so on, they come and pick up your family members and put them in jail and harass you. Your businesses are destroyed. So people are terrified in positions of having to take decisions which are right. But he's one of them, Imran Khan, who stood up. And now he's in a cell, which is 6 by 8, with an open sewer for a toilet, with cameras fitted in, so he has no sort of privacy. And insects and, and no fan, nothing, kept in disgusting conditions in order to break him. Now, what other tactics have they used to break him? They have tried to sort of blackmail all his party members into leaving the party. Doing the same thing, picking up the family members, even children. So you can see that Pakistan has descended into hell. And yet the foreign powers who are behind all this, who are supporting the local sort of powers to carry these out, are keeping quiet. Human rights, USA, UK. When UK was asked about it, they said, oh, it's an internal matter. I mean, this is duplicity of the first order. Anyway, let's continue with this. So I'm going to be showing you a little bit about who Imran Khan is. Yeah, I will. We'll go through a little bit as to who Imran Khan is, give you a little bit of background, and then who his opponents are, how they managed to sort of topple him, and where we are today, as I said, waiting for a decision for tomorrow. Okay, so he became Prime Minister in 2018. So it gave him a sort of period of 3.5 years before he was ousted. And the local culprits who are managing this corruption and the abuse of law and human rights and everything you can think of, and looting the country, are these people: the army heads, the generals, the Sharif's family, the Zardari family, the Bhutto's husband, and they collectively, in fact, the court, one of the good sort of judges who ousted Nawaz Sharif when the Panama case was brought in, because he had stashed away so much money. The Panama case opened it out totally, and that decision was taken by the court to oust him. And of course, he's here in London, and we've been to a lot of these protests to his flat in Mayfair, essentially saying, return the looted money or resign and don't sort of carry out the mischief that you carry out with your family and your cohorts in Pakistan on people who want to do some good to Pakistan. And the foreign hand, who's the foreign hand? Sorry. The foreign hand here, of course, is the USA and the West in general. And why is it that they are against Imran Khan? We know that because he wanted an independent foreign policy. He wanted to make policy which was in the interest of Pakistan. If it helped him to buy cheap oil from Russia, he wanted to do that, but he was not allowed to do that. So those types of things are the ones that cause problems in the Western sort of context. So now he's in jail and we are awaiting this charge. And not only is this one charge about selling a watch and all that, there are 200 other cases which are to do with the treason and which is punishable by death, in fact. And all these are false charges. We'll come to that a little bit more in detail. Okay, here we go. This party, as you wanted to know, is Party of Justice. It was set up in 1996. And of course, as you know, Imran Khan was a popular leader. He had a lot of audience there and a following. And he's put his effort towards building, a party which would be an accountability party for the politicians that were corrupt over there. There he is. When he won in 2018, he then set out his vision. He wanted to sort of bring in social sort of measures that would help the people and also be able to have a prosperity program that would put trust in foreign investors. At the moment, nobody wants to invest in Pakistan. And what we have now is a complete and total utter chaos in politics. With the increased, energy prices the world over, Pakistan has been severely affected, along with the other countries. And of course, that we all know is the reason for these energy prices going up. Okay, here we have the measures that he brought in order to bring in the politicians to heel and corruption. He set up an accountability bureau it was already there, but he sort of gave it some freedom to exercise its remit, which the current government and the one that ousted him about 15 months ago, they have changed the nature of this institution by appointing their own man and disregarding essentially what the vision of or remit of that NAB was. He reformed a number of laws in order to sort of stop money laundering and so on. There's a whole slew of them. So I won't go through that because these are measures which you would think are commonsensical and would be able to keep the powers that be in some check for the prosperity of the country. Now, what's his background? He did his education there in Pakistan, but came to college over here, went to Oxford, and was very successful in terms of a cricketer. And of course, he got his degree and became a cricketer by profession for a while, until he won the World Cup. The first time the Pakistan was able to win the World Cup, and that put Pakistan on the map, as it were. And he was one of them who brought the image of Pakistan up to some level of recognition, apart from having to be identified with corruption and dictatorships of one sort or another. He married Jemima Goldsmith, and of course, he has two sons. They both live here. The sons live here with Jemima. And she has been a very good person, despite the fact that they're divorced, because he remarried again. And of course, those things didn't marry, and 3 marriages. So the one at the moment is to a very, what is called a traditional lady with hijab and burqa. You can't see her at all, just her eyes. So he's in that state. Now, here we have now what he has done as well is to be able to build some philanthropic, some buildings and hospitals and so on, which are in the interest of giving free treatment to poor people, especially those who are affected by cancer. So he built a hospital there. It's been running there for the past 20 years now, nearly, and he's built a university as well. This is before he became the prime minister. So he raised funds for that. Now here he is again, elected. And of course, while he was in power, what he has done is to introduce a lot of these social programs. Now, these programs are the ones that enable poor people and families, especially women and so on, to be able to give government support for their livelihood. He's introduced this health card, which gives them free treatment. Of course, it's not completely, in the time that he had, he didn't offer it to everybody, but to certain provinces that he had some control over. And he will introduce that program as well. He also introduced what he called the program for house building. And he brought in these shelters as well for people who used to sleep on the roads. He built shelters so that they could come and have food and sleep the night over there. And of course, the youth as well. He gave loans and opportunities for them to progress in their careers. So all these facilities and programs he introduced. Now, why was he, when he was ousted after 3.5 years in power, to a very, what I would call artificial means. They brought in a no confidence motion in Parliament, after having bought some of his MPs by bribing them to vote against him. And this was all managed by the local sort of hands that were in power, that worked on the bidding of the army, and of course the foreign power, which is USA. Now you could see he was tremendously popular. Now, when he was in power, because the certain escalation in cost and thing was going up, but with a reasonable price increases, and there was a certain amount of resentment in the public at that time. But what happened was that when he got ousted, he said, look, I'm going to talk to you frankly about what's happening now. And in his absence, in these 15 months, prices have doubled, trebled. And energy costs have gone up, food costs have gone up, everything, and no law and order either. So the people are now looking back to his particular tenure and say, my God, that was something quite astonishing, and that was good. But that good order that brought in foreign investment and confidence of the people, there's a big diaspora of Pakistanis in all over the world. They remit money, which is a good foreign exchange for the country. And of course, with that confidence, investment also comes in. And there was a fair amount of growth in the country because tax collection was better. So development was going on, and these social programs were put in place and so on. So people are now looking back. When he got ousted, people started to flock to what he had to say. And these are the crowds you can see how well they have received his message after being ousted. It's only in the last 15 days he's in jail. Before that, he was confined, half confined to his thing. They're not allowed to make meetings and so on, because, you know, the powers that be over there, they restricted him all counts. Right now, along with his own sort of jail sentence that he's in jail with, he's got 10 to 15,000 of his supporters in jail as well. And a lot of his party members have also left because of being blackmailed. So the whole idea was to try and destroy his party by the powers that be, the corrupt powers, and ruin him totally in terms of his image. But the fear is that they will probably kill him as well. Now, this type of threat is very real, because we have seen that these government and their cohorts have killed people by giving them slow poisons and what have you, who were supposed to be material witnesses against their cases. So we have a tremendous amount of lawlessness appearing in Pakistan right now. Now, what else has Imran Khan done which has offended the international community? Not the Muslim community, but the international community, because he talked about Kashmir, because India is very influential. Kashmir has been virtually absorbed into the Indian Indians as a completely independent state. It had some sort of special status. Now it's been absorbed as part of the Institute of India. And of course, there are 90,000 troops there to keep peace, which means that they don't have freedom at all. So he brings that matter up at the UN. And he's, making sure that people don't forget this, despite the fact the UN had said there must be a plebiscite in that region to say whether the Kashmiris want to be with India or with Pakistan. So that has been carried out by India. He also sort of spoke about Islamophobia. Says something needs to be done about this anti-Islam that media keeps continually sort of bringing up as issues against Islam in order to discredit Islam. So fortunately now, the UN has heard that, And they have made a special day, a World Day, 15th of March, to call it Anti-Islamophobia Day. So that's something that that's a direct result of his speech there. And of course, he talked about money laundering. Money laundering happens in this way, that the money that they get by way of loans from the banks in the country, especially the powers that be, the corrupt powers, they take these loans and then take the money out of the country, with the result that each one of these people, the two parties, the main ones, they are billionaires several times over, along with some generals as well. So this money transfer that takes place called money laundering, and that's still going on. And that's one of the reasons why they don't want Imran Khan there. Now, this is me over there protesting, against the going-ons in Pakistan that is taking place over there. So the threats to Imran Khan, where is it coming from? It's not just the army or just the two leaders of the big opposition party, but institutionally, these people who are all put in by these corrupt leaders, they're all against him. So to bring about a change is very difficult for him, but he's standing firm, and that's why the people are behind him. When he left, when he was ousted from government, his popularity was about 40–50%. But now it's about 90%, because people are now realizing that what he had delivered and what he stands for is what they want. And they're not being given the opportunity for an election. And although elections are due in November, but the opposition and the army and the powers that be, they're trying the best not to hold elections because they know that Imran Khan will come back into power. Now, the reason why one of the courts took a decision to get rid of the government previous to the last one, Nawaz Sharif's government, is because he was part of the the Panama Papers. All people who had these offshore accounts for money created that was money laundered, brought in from outside, kept in tax shelters. That was exposed, and the Supreme Court at the time took the decision, okay, we are going to make sure that at least we can make him responsible for that, because it's an international, evidence is there, and therefore he was ousted from prime ministership. That's his family there, Nawaz Sharif. He lives in this Mayfair flat over there, worth several million. And of course, all from money looted from the people and from foreign investments that have come in. Now, this is the case that Imran Khan brought against Nawaz Sharif, and that sort of ousted him. And fortunately, at that time, the Supreme Court had the spine to do that. So that disqualification of Nawaz Sharif by the Supreme Court. His wealth, although I think it's an understatement, it says his wealth is about $1.8 billion, but it's several times over that. He's got about 64 properties in UK. This is the other sort of leader, Zardari. He was husband of Benazir Bhutto. I've met this guy when he wasn't anybody. He used to sell tickets for his father's cinema house in the payment. But now he's got 34 sugar mills, thousands of acres of arable sugarcane land, and a Portman hotel over there in Portman Square. So innumerable other properties in France and Dubai, in UK. He was known as Mr. 10%, and then he became Mr. 90% as a commission agent. So these two had a nexus of understanding, saying when you are in power, we'll bring up charges against you, but we'll not really pursue it. And when you are in power, you can do the same thing. So there are lots of cases against both these, which Imran Khan then activated, which is the reason why they all got together to get him out. Now, yeah, again, all his holdings and so on. Now, generals are the biggest power in Pakistan. They are corrupt to their, to their eyeballs. Legally, they benefit by giving themselves plots of land, houses, agricultural land, and what have you, as they move up the ladder. This is one way of keeping them happy. And of course, once they achieve the power, then they start to be much more open, not open, but they start to open up their sort of influence and then peddle that for billions of dollars of whatever decisions they're responsible for. And they are the main sort of guardians, supposed guardians of the country, but instead they are the looters of the country in the name of democracy. They don't want to introduce martial law because martial law makes them look internationally bad. So they keep a front of these Democrats, corrupt leaders like Zardari and Nawaz Sharif, and tell them what to do. And it suits the West as well to keep these foreign, corrupt people in power because they carry out the bidding. So if America says, look, we want a base here, they will say, yes, please come in and do whatever it is you want to do, which Imran Khan said, no, I'm not going to allow that. Now, here's a joke about, of course, them being involved, you see, in land and in businesses and all sorts of things. So at the moment, you see, if you take a budget of Pakistan, you have something like, say, 100 as a figure. Half of that goes towards debt servicing because so many loans have been borrowed from the World Bank and from IMF and wherever. So debt servicing, half of that is gone. The collection of revenue, which is, as I said, about 100, is just to give you percentage-wise. So half goes over debt servicing, and what is left, half of that goes towards the army. So you get a quarter left, and of that quarter, they start to use it for projects, for development. And these projects, of course, mean money that goes in the bank gets taken out. Now, when I was in Pakistan, I was actually told that if you're interested in starting a project in Pakistan, you can do that tomorrow, go to the bank, and they'll pull out a folder. That folder says, if you want to sort of open an industry, this is what the money is going to cost. And what you have to do in order to sort of become eligible for that is provide collateral. And the collateral, we advise you to go and buy a barren piece of land. We'll send people over to value it as millions and millions of worth. And that will become collateral. We'll give you the money. And of course, we'll take our cut. And you can then sort of work this company for about a year. And after that, declare yourself bankrupt. So you would have got all that money. Everybody gets their cut. And then, of course, the money gets laundered and sent abroad. So this is the way that things are happening in Pakistan. And of course, the army is very much into it. Not only are they in the industry and various other sort of land grab type of thing, they've done a recent one through this, again, corrupt government, 1 million acres to be given to them so that they can give it to all the officers to try and keep the bribes up. So you can see. Now, these are the two corrupt generals. The past general, totally corrupt, responsible for, awful things happening in Pakistan. He's handed it power to this guy called Asim Musir. He is the current chief of the army, also carrying out the abuse of power that is taking place. Here, see these generals, they've become billionaires, stash money in tax shelters. Corruption, in the corruption index, international index, Pakistan in 2021 was 140, and it has slipped even further. So it's regarded as one of the most corrupt places in the world at the moment. And yet, the ruling class, they live in such luxury over here, all under the full view of the powers that be over here and the organizations that seem to sort of say, we are the guardians of democracy. It's a sort of an eyewash of a total magnitude. So that's all I want to say today. This is the army in power over there. And what we have now is the life of one individual who has found it in him to stand up for the people and do good to the people. And he has been really pulled down by the powers that be, supported by the West, which I think we need to keep note of that. Because otherwise, these powers that be would not be able to survive. So anyway, if you have any questions, do sort of ask. I'll try to answer. Thank you very much for listening.
What is the USA supporting the corruption?
Because they wanted the base in Pakistan to be able to sort of surround China. You see, China is the real foe that USA regards, and regards Russia as the foe as well. Now, with the two now coming together, if Pakistan becoming closer, along with all the other BRIC countries that are becoming part of that narrative and building blocks that China is creating, USA is in a fix. So what it can do is it brings in these corrupt people to manage the 100 bases that are around the world in countries where leadership accepts the dictates of the USA. Otherwise, why do you need 800 bases?
They want some control to stop China and Russia to integrate them.
That's right.
Yeah.
You see, what China did was to start a big project.
We stop that.
At the moment, yes, it's stopped, because if you get rid of Imran Khan, that whole process is stopped. See? Okay, let me take another question from the gallery here. Anybody else over there?
Yeah.
Yes,
Helena. Yeah. What happens sadly, what happens in Pakistan is the same as in Egypt, Niger, Ecuador. Anybody who wants to make a bit
have
of
an independent policy. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Egypt is the same. When Morsi came in, that's why he was got rid of. In Niger, we've got the situation now with France. I think that's going to sort of, we have to see how that develops. Although Africa is waking up, and I think they want to sort of try and get their independence, as it were. So we'll see how successful they'll be.
Yeah, and Ecuador's the same.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are about 40 countries in the world where regime changes have taken place.
Yeah.
And we've got 800 bases that are all over the world. I think we've seen the acme of US power. It's now on decline simply because China has come up, and the way that the leadership has guided or driven USA, I think it has taken them into a path which is totally wrong. And I think the US, the next election will probably we'll see some changes coming through, because I think if the Republican Party comes in, they'll stop the Ukraine war, I think. And there might be some different policies adopted Yeah. Okay. There is a
Do you
question
think, I want to
here.
ask you, do you think Imran Khan's
Oh.
interest in cricket has made him more moderate? And was your protest in London or Pakistan? You said you went to protest. Where did you protest? Was it in Pakistan or London?
No, in London, in London.
And was his,
I was
and was
there
his
last
interest in
week
cricket?
at
Did his
Trafalgar
interest in
Square.
cricket make the man more moderate?
And of course, they're trying to scrub his memory of his successes in Pakistan right now. Okay, I'll take your question over here. Yeah. Yeah, well, in Switzerland, I think a lot of people have accounts, numbered accounts and so on, and elsewhere as well, tax shelters. So we have a lot of this type of thing going on. They call it dirty money, but unfortunately, it's so rampant. There are no checks and balances or even rules to contain that. Yeah, well, I mean, there are these rules. I think now that every account needs to be declared if it's a Swiss account. When I was living in Switzerland and I had a small amount of money over there, then I had a notice saying that I need to declare my amount, otherwise they're going to take half of it away as tax or whatever. So I had about 2,000 pounds that I think, and I said, okay, I'm going to close my account and take that money out. So having an account in Switzerland means that you have to satisfy some of the regulations as well. Yeah, can I take the question from here? Anybody else? Yes, Imran Khan, thank you. The question is he a moderate Muslim? Moderate, yeah. Well, he is very much a moderate Muslim because he has been educated to the extent that he realizes where religion fits into one's life and doesn't take over one's life totally. He is now become more religious in carrying out some of the ritual part, especially his, I think, prayers and so on, and he reads the Quran. But in terms of his lifestyle also, I think he's very moderate. He's very careful. He's not a spendthrift. When he makes a trip abroad, they costed that trip. It took $68,000 to go to USA, his whole entourage when he had to go there, compared to about $750,000, which other leaders have used in order to make trips to USA. So his lifestyle and his approach to dealing with women and the difficulties of the country, of the poor, I think they're very, very moderate and very acceptable.
What about women wearing a veil? Did you believe women have to cover their faces? Did you believe women have to cover their faces?
The people? Yeah. Yeah, I'll come back to you. The question here is, how are they dealing with China? Because China was fairly close to Imran Khan. Mm-hmm. And because now the shift has taken place more towards USA, what is the impact? Well, the corrupt government is moved further away in terms of actual projects, but China is a long-term player and its policies are not very short-term. So it is pursuing its projects that it has initiated in Pakistan because it is also in the interest of China to be able to maintain that that link with Pakistan, because if you look at the way that Pakistan is, it's got a type of very close border with China, to the Western China, and that sort of route from Western China to the Arabian Sea gives them access to all the oil sort of from the Middle East, rather than going through the Straits of Malacca and so on. So, and it opens up the Central Asia as to outside world as well, because those Central Asian countries like Turkestan and also all those Uzbekistan, they're landlocked. So this was going to be a port to Arabian Sea. And I think that link has, that highway has been done by China, and it's already in operation. So the current government is keeping the links open with China, but I think the corruption is minimal there because China undertakes to build itself and therefore doesn't give the money out. And this is the difference between what China does as opposed to World Bank and IMF, because these institutions, they give money to the government and the government pockets it into their own private accounts.
Was he too naive to go in so soon to try and change order, or maybe get more established so we can get links to these corrupt people that he could influence them to come on his side?
Yeah.
He seems to have gone in too quick, too many things he wanted to change, and that's called a reaction. He didn't have the power support behind him. So I think he was a bit naive doing it too soon.
Well, the question here is that was Imran Khan too much of too naive to disregard the powers that be and also the ground realities of Pakistan? Very good question. Well, what they wanted right from the very beginning in order to obtain his cooperation or to give cooperation to him was they wanted a complete write-off of all their past misdeeds, which is what they did after he was ousted. They changed the laws to make them completely absolved, not guilty. Clear cases, they were sort of shut down and they made into non-operational. So you can see.
Did he agree to that?
Hmm?
Did he agree to the first about whitewashing the whole?
No, that's why he's in trouble. That's why he's in trouble.
Okay.
He said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit down with the corrupt people and agree with them, because the first thing they want is to write off all this and let them keep the money. He said, no, I want that money to be brought back because it's the people's money. Hmm? Yeah. India is keeping quiet at the moment because it's having a big laugh, because, these generals are doing the work that it was trying to do for a long time to try and bring Pakistan down and, of course, destroy Pakistan in any way they can. Now, this is being done by the people themselves, the corrupt leaders themselves in Pakistan.
What about veil wearing? Did you believe women should wear a veil to cover their face? Did you believe women should cover their face?
Who?
What about veil wearing? Did you think
Who?
women should wear a veil? Wear a veil. I put it in chat.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what you want, right?
Yeah, can't make out what you're saying over
I'm
here.
saying, did he believe women should wear a veil? Did he think thieves should have their hands cut off? I put it in chat. I put it in chat. I put it for you in chat. Can you not read?
Oh, about the women's wear, you mean?
Wear a veil, cover their face.
Oh, yeah, they're covering the hijab and the burqa.
Did he believe in that?
He's not pursuing that. He's not pursuing that. He is not going into this area where he's calling for women to be covered up and so on. Although his wife, follows the practice of, burqa and hijab and so on, it's an individual matter and he's left it to the people and the women to decide for themselves.
What about the present government? You have to wear. What about the present government?
It's not a.
What about the present government? Do you now have to wear a veil in Pakistan?
The current government, what's their attitude to
Who's?
the current?
Oh, the current. You see, the current government and the army, they are not interfering too much in terms of the religious practices, because there is the right wing as well in the country, which they don't want to sort of antagonize in any way. So they don't bring in anything that is too conservative. So there is a freedom of practice of all sorts in various parts of the country. Some parts of the country are a bit more traditional, other parts are less. But it's all to do with the socio-economic type of situation. A lot of people are poor and therefore they live their lifestyle in the way that they have been used to for a long, long time. In the cities, of course, you have a lot of people who are a bit more well off and therefore more educated, and they have a lifestyle which is quite different from the rural areas. So there is quite a big mix of things over there, in the same way that, a lot of people are practice the religion and some don't. No. There is no compulsion. There's no compulsion. In fact, the Quran itself says there's no compulsion in religion. So if anybody wants you to do something, one can simply say, look, read up your Quran and see what it tells you. It says there's no compulsion in religion. Bangladesh has, in fact, done well because they have better governance and better rule and no army, as we have in the, yeah. Okay, Pam, you've got a question?
Yes. Did you say that 90% of the people in Pakistan back Imran Khan, or did I?
Yes, surveys are showing that it used to be about 60-70%. Now that has moved up even more because each time these harsh measures are used on him, more people sort of seem to back him because they know that he's the only one who's fighting battles on their behalf because none of the others do.
Right, thank you.
So he has become very, very popular, and that's made the job of these opponents that much more difficult. So so occasionally we have a judge who stands up and does a ruling, but that's very, very infrequent. So today's and tomorrow's decision by the Supreme Court, I think, is very, very important because what that Supreme Court has to decide soon is all the regulations that the previous government had enacted in order to free themselves and absolve themselves of guilt, that is going to be thrown out and not acceptable. So we'll have to see whether Supreme Court is going to do that or not. Because if it does conform to what the government wants, then of course the government has made itself completely guiltless, and innocent, as it were.
And did you also say, Shafiq, that the Belt and Road project is still going ahead? It's not being stopped.
The Belt and Road project is still on. The Chinese are, I think, going a little bit slow on this a bit because they are not quite sure whether there is enough law in the country to be able to even provide security.
I see.
Because one of their people got killed some time back, and this is all the type of mischief that takes place by powers that be that want to bring in issues between, say, China and Pakistan. So they play it a little bit, but you see, China is very smart. They are now sort of putting a lot more emphasis on Afghanistan. Now they have got Afghanistan leadership visiting them, and they have started to sort of look for oil in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, would you believe, has the largest resources or deposits of lithium. Now, as you know, lithium is the new oil, as it were. So Afghanistan is going to be very rich before long with so much lithium underground. So Chinese are going to sort of mine that as well. So they're putting a lot more emphasis there at the moment and less on Pakistan.
Right, thank you.
Who? Well, no, none of the people or officials in Pakistan are independent. They have been appointed in the last 30 years by the corrupt people themselves, and they carry out the orders of the corrupt people. Yeah, well, this is why everybody is fearing him.
they're not going to rule for him. They're gonna rule for me.
Yeah, exactly. That's why the ruling is waited. See, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he's going to retire next month. And if he retires on this bad note, you know, his whole life would have been meaningless. So he did make a comment saying that I don't want to retire in sort of disgrace of one sort or another. Let's see whether he does make a ruling that, you know, releases him from 15. But the Chief Justice is one. Well, we don't know. Well, the generals are billionaires, so many of them. So, yeah. Sorry. June, did you have a question? Ah, okay, all right. All right. So anyhow, what's the time? It's nearly up, time up. Thank you very much for your questions and thank you here as well. Thank you. Thank you.